everyone. Welcome to the second episode of the Start Now podcast. This is Nomeen, your host speaking. So, at the beginning of this year, two of my best friends reached out to me and they said, "Hey Nomeen, we're starting this challenge, this book club for 2020 called the Accountability Book Club. We will challenge ourselves to read 1 to 3 books each month, and at the end of each month we'll just share with each other what we've learned from the books." So I was like, okay, yeah, I would love to join, because every year I decide or make a goal for myself to start reading more, but I never actually end up reading that year. Like in 2019, I don't think I finished a single book. So to add to their challenge, I said, okay, why don't we make a podcast episode every month, and then we'll just talk and have a conversation and just share what we've learned in the books. And that's exactly what we did. So you're about to listen to Mikala and Vania Bryson. They will talk about the Sula by Toni Morrison and the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. I hope you will enjoy. Okay, so let's get started. Girls, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, go ahead, Mikala.
Sure. My name is Mikala Allen, and this month I read one book, Sula by Toni Morrison.
Hi, my name's Vania, and this month I read 3 books. I read Duct Tape Marketing by John Jansch. That's how you pronounce that. I read the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis, and I also read How the Fire Started by my sister-in-law, Meredith Rosendahl.
Wow. Well, I actually haven't read any book this month because I joined them. I joined them like a week ago, and I think they had already started reading books beginning of the year, and then decided to start this book club. And then I decided to join because every year I say, okay, this year I'm going to start reading more, but I never end up reading. So this is actually a perfect opportunity.
She does that.
Exactly. So now, because I've committed to making this podcast episode, I have to read. So yeah. So I'll join next month. All right. So who wants to go first?
I'm going to talk about How the Fire Started. If you guys like short stories, oh my goodness, Mikala, you would love this. Okay, you would love this because it's short stories and dark-ish stories. She tries to end the series on a lighter note. It's really cool. That's one of my favorite stories. It's called The Missing. And she's got a couple of stories in there that made me think back into like my adolescence, and how skewed my perspective was, right? So like I think this is something that everybody can relate to, right? Like you maximize something that really shouldn't be, or vice versa, right? She has such a great understanding and memory of that experience, and it really shines throughout her work. And I just loved reliving those experiences. Like there's this one story about a girl in high school who just is completely like all about this one guy, and then it turns out, of course, she's just like not, she's like a second thought, like a
not a priority for him.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like we've all had that experience, even probably guys, where it's like this one person is everything to me, but when you flip perspective, it's like, wow, like I was so insignificant.
I don't know what you're talking about. Honestly.
It's cringeworthy, right? Yeah. So this got me thinking, because you know how we were supposed to like write about something that we learned. I tend to like shy away from fiction, even though this month I read 2 fiction books. It's not really my go-to genre, but I'm learning to really like it, and I'm trying to learn what I can learn from it, if that makes sense. So obviously this book really helped me see like a glimpse into like, it was a glimpse into Meredith's head, right? And it was so cool because I could pick up my my phone and be like, "Hey, what does this story mean?" You know what I mean? And I'm sure she loved talking about it, and I loved it. I still have so many questions for her.
I think it's okay, really cool that you had that perspective on fiction because I love fiction.
Me too.
I think it's probably my favorite genre, but I love fiction. I love getting lost in worlds. And like some people would categorize it as like, oh, it's like an escape from reality. But I think it's almost the opposite. I think with fiction, like it is so, unless you're dealing with fantasy, but then that's like a completely different story. And I think you'll get into that a little bit with like the Screwtape Letters because that's fiction, but it's like fantasy kind of thing. But I think with fiction, like it's reality, but like it's an imaginative reality. Like you can just imagine realistic scenarios happening. And so like with Toni Morrison, so background on this, like I chose to do this book because I just graduated from Liberty with an English degree, completely dissatisfied with the books that I read in university. I feel like I missed out on a lot of things. And it's not like a bash on like the program itself. I think we did a good job of getting the foundation, but I think like they never really did a focus on African American literature. So after graduating, I was like, there's so many books I haven't read. And so I bought like 10 Toni Morrison books because I haven't read any Toni Morrison. So like that's part of my plan to read at least one of those per month.
Gotcha.
So I started with Sula.
Hold on a second. Can you tell us a little bit about Toni Morrison and why she's so important to you?
So Toni Morrison, as I would say, is probably one of the premier African American writers, period, much less female African American writer. She's written probably 15 major novels covering different aspects of like the African American experience. And she's a Nobel Peace Prize winner for literature, I think in the 70s. She taught at, like she graduated from Howard. She was a teacher at Howard, Princeton, I think even Harvard for a little bit. Really well known. And I think really well known in all circles except for Christian, I would say.
Really?
So I think, so that's probably the one reason why we didn't grow up reading her books, you know what I mean? But like everywhere else, like the more I travel outside of like Christian circles, it's like, oh my gosh, Toni Morrison's amazing. I'm like, no, I know what you're talking about. So it's been like an adult experience and like introduction, which I think is good because Toni, she deals a lot with like really difficult topics in her books. It's very realistic to like the African American experience. And she would say that like that's her purpose for writing, is writing about those unspeakable things that like majority culture wouldn't really want to acknowledge or even discuss. And like this is her way of forcing people to realize like what reality was for, you know, a particular minority group within American culture. So that's kind of like her background and her purpose for writing. And so with Sula, you kind of deal with so many different like things. Like this book is crazy to me. I think you have to reread it. Like every single time you reread it, you have to pull like a theme and read it from the point of view of that theme. So like personally, like I read it for the point of view of friendship. So the book, like the main character is Sula, although she's not really introduced until like halfway through the book. You kind of get more of like her background, like her family's background, and then her best friend Nell, who's like another semi-main character. You get like her background as well. And so the book kind of focuses on a contrast of like the different aspects of culture and society that they represent. So Sula is very much, she doesn't care about society and like their norms. She's very anti-normal, and Nell is very much so like the stricter, like this is what society says is acceptable, so this is what I'm going to do. And so Sula does everything opposite. She, like during that time, like interracial marriage and dating, and that was never accepted, but she would date like white men instead of like black men. She at one point slept with Nell's husband, not because it was like she just didn't see anything wrong with it. It wasn't like she was trying to lash out at her or do something bad. It was just like that just wasn't an accepted norm, so she did it. And so Toni kind of paints this picture of good and bad But then when you analyze the characters, you would probably say, oh, Sula's bad and Nell is good. But when you analyze what happened in their lives and the things that led up to them becoming the people that they are, you realize that it's not as black and white. And so she does a good job of twisting perspective on like what you think is going on and actually showcasing the fact that humanity in and of itself, not stepping on a Christian Judeo basis, but humanity is not purely evil and purely good.
Right.
The majority of the time, like there's a mix. So I don't know if that gives you a snapshot. It's a little bit what Sula is, but yeah.
I feel like, so most of the time when like I consume fiction, it's like through like movies or TV shows and stuff. And that is one thing that like I've really grown to appreciate is like when a writer really understands that life is like much more nuanced than like this is the bad guy, this is the good guy, right? And I think that's such a hard thing to tackle, because like you either like someone or you don't like them, you know what I mean? Like it's or I don't know, I'm not explaining this very well.
They do a good job of making people look like they're human instead of just like a label, black and white. But they showed the human side of it and then make us feel empathy.
Right. And this is why you is so popular, right? But and I love that. I love it when the author or the writers toy with like your morals and like what you use to define, you know, your moral standards, right? This is like something like we watched House of Cards. I think we gave up on it. This is what we do. We watch TV shows and they're really good at the beginning and then they like get boring and predictable. But like have you guys seen this show?
I've seen like the first 6 episodes or something.
Okay, I swear this is relevant. Okay, but the main character, he ends up like murdering a couple of people. Yeah, he does. And then like you almost like are like, yeah, sure. Even though like it's not even that it's like, yeah, sure, because obviously like what he did, it wasn't even like remotely justified like you, right? It was like totally selfish and disgusting, but he's a likable person. And it's like it's so hard to separate that, even though you know it's
no, for real. Okay, it's like, okay, so in Sula, she does like all this stuff, like she sleeps with all the men in the town. Like when she was a kid, like she watched her mom like burn alive and didn't do anything. She sleeps with her best friend's husband. She like does all of this stuff, and you're like, I really should hate her. And the townspeople, they hate her guts. But in hating her, they become better people because the women are spending more time at home with their husbands, like cooking them dinner and catering and being nicer because they're like terrified that their husbands are going to go run off and sleep with Sula. They're being
really
better
make you
mothers.
A better person, though.
Well, listen, but they're being better like mothers to their children because they're actually feeding their children instead of, because like Sula would give like food to the children. That was like one of the things that she would do. Like she would be nice to the kids. And so the mother's like, oh, like don't go next to Sula, like come here, like I'll give you what you need, that kind of mentality. And it's like little things like that throughout society. It's like she became that thing that everybody banded together to like hate. And in reaction to their hatred to her, they started doing things that they really should have been doing. And like you could get into norms of, you know, husband and wife being like, but I mean, in that time period, like
and that's great and all, but that's not sustainable. You know what I mean?
Well, no, because when Sula died, then they went back to their like, you know, and so it's like she, like as a reader, I honestly love her, and I think that's like controversial in and of itself because you can kind of understand her psyche, and that doesn't make her right. But I think like she tapped into something that was other in society. But then as within the story in and of itself, it's like they hated her, but they were also drawn to her.
I guess I have to read it to understand it, because now my question is, did she do those things because she knew people are messed up and hypocritical, so she just wanted to prove them and show them how bad, I guess, they are, by being the bad person?
I think the sense that you get from Sula is she was very much her own person. So she did whatever she wanted, and she, like, that is also the beauty of it. She didn't fall into the role of being the bad and being the other. Like, she was that because of some decisions that she made, but she could quite easily do the opposite of that and still remain true to herself, if that makes sense. And so it's like, when you would, so when she kind of, like, you analyze a little bit like why she slept with her best friend's husband, in her mind, like, they didn't have a great relationship anyways, and she was like, I could just sleep with him, and, like, I didn't want to keep him because I didn't want to fall in love, but he was there, and, like, that was not the norm. Like, you don't sleep with people's husbands and take their husbands, but she kind of did it. And in the conversation that she had with her best friend, she was more like, almost like she just couldn't understand why it was a problem. And you got the sense that she was like, but we're best friends, like, our relationship should transcend whatever.
And you like this person?
No, I think it's just interesting to
I was
see,
like, wow,
how her
I
brain
am
works.
judging you hardcore right now.
I would never. No, but it's like her brain. It's like like, her principles was like, she just couldn't understand, like, how, like, that she could do something that would make her best friend, like, turn against, like, it's, I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying, like, she had a certain
totally get that
she would hold to. Yeah. So it's like, I mean, and the husband was trapped. Like, there's things like.
So I'm assuming that this person had a really rough childhood then, right? Because, like, that's that's how you come out. It doesn't, and that's like one thing that blows my mind and makes me really sad is that, like, for example, in Korea, right, our bathrooms, the floors are drains. Okay. So that means a lot of the times Koreans don't even have bathtubs. So, like, the sink, the toilet, and then, like, the shower head will be off to the side, but the whole floor is your shower, basically, right? And so I did not grow up with, like, the dry, like, we had slippers that you put on because the floor was always wet, right? And it used to, like, drive Evan insane because I would just get out of the shower and then just, like, walk around all floppy and wet, and then, like, and he'd be like, why would you do this? Like, this is so, like, careless and thoughtless and inconsiderate of you. And now that I take care, or try to take care of the bathroom, it's like, I understand. It's like, oh yeah, no, it is really inconsiderate, and, like, things get moldy because there's no drain because it's not matched up. Anyways, so it's like, because of the way that I grew up, because of my experiences, it's like, I didn't, even though that's what I was, even though, like, my actions had the same exact effect, I wasn't seeing that because that's not what I grew to, like, learn, and then, so it's like, you understand, I don't know, like, but does it make my actions any less wrong, any less thoughtless? Like, no, it's like the definition of thoughtless and inconsiderate,
I think with that, like, I mean, we keep bringing you back to this book, but, like, her mom was very much that, not, you wouldn't even say, like, the town prostitute, because that's not how she was portrayed. She was very much had her own agency, but she would, like, sleep around with, like, people's husbands, but it wasn't like a derogatory thing. And, like, it's complicated because you're dealing with culture in which some things are accepted, or maybe not even accepted, but they happen and people see that they happen and they don't like it, but it's a part of the culture, so you just keep it. And part of that was, she was like the woman that kept their husbands busy, but then the husbands were still attentive to their wives. There was, like, a weird balance that was created, and Sula grew up seeing that mentality, and, like, she stepped out of it because she began to do the same thing, but with, like, white men, and that was where you would draw the line. That's not acceptable. Or the husband would leave their wife for her. That's not acceptable. And so it's like, for her, it's hard to, like, how do you explain that to her? You say, you can sleep with someone's husband, but you can't take their husband. It's like, what? Like, where do you draw the line? Like, how is that the problem? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're dealing with a broken system
Mm-hmm.
of like, you know, and you're not looking at it from a Christian standpoint, like,
right.
Because, you know, within the frames of the story. But it's like, I don't know, it's so in your case, I wouldn't say that you were wrong necessarily. I think if you continued to do it after he had expressed that this was a massive issue for him, then that's when that would become wrong. But I think initially it's not like you were being thoughtless, it's just it wasn't your norm.
It's a whole cultural difference. But for your character, this is like she watched her mom growing up, like doing all those things. So nobody really judges their parents when they're little, because you know parents don't do wrong; they're always right. So you don't really like judge them until you, of course, you get older and then you learn more about life.
See, that's the thing though. Like, obviously the example that I gave, sorry, did I cut you off, Mimi?
No, it's okay.
Okay. The example that I gave was obviously like a mild example. Like, I can give you worse examples, but I think the principle still stands, right? Because after a certain time, regardless of what you were taught in the past, you have to take responsibility for your actions and the consequences that immediately follow your actions, or, you know, come from your actions, right? So being an adult, what I should have been able to do is get out of the shower and then realize that there was that the situation is different now, and that my actions are in fact affecting the other person who lives with me, right? So like it becomes more understandable when you know my background, but it still doesn't take away from the fact that I was thoughtless, careless. So like I think you can kind of, you know, that's the story that you see over and over and over again, right, with these people. Because I'm sorry, I was going to go into a whole different TV show, but we're not going to go down that route, so never mind.
Good job.
No, I love it.
What if your husband, let's say, was not American but a Korean guy, and you did the same thing? Is it still toxic, or it's okay, it's normal?
That's really interesting. So like, so we live in an American house, so the consequences are the same, but it's like that, you know, if a tree, you know, drops in the forest, does anybody hear it? It's that argument right there, right?
Kind of, yeah. But then you both don't see the problem, because you don't think like, oh,
right, so is it a problem?
If
well, maybe not even a problem. I think, are you arguing with it right and wrong?
Exactly.
Like,
but then if you don't know that it's wrong, then is it wrong?
Right, because you're not even necessarily being inconsiderate of the other person, because the other person doesn't care.
Exactly. And then that's why we have to make mistakes, right? We learn from our mistakes. So I don't think after there is mold because you kept leaving water on the floor, and then you'd be like, oh, you will make the connection. Got it. That's why. Because when you grow up, like, it's always there. You don't think about it. Like, we don't know how water and mold and whatever things work when we were young.
Right.
Yeah. I think maybe the argument comes at like when you become aware. Like, awareness is the key to right and wrong.
Yeah.
Because like, I mean, you can be an adult and like you still don't really, or it's a major factor.
Sure.
Because I mean, you can, you know, do something and not be aware of it, and it's still wrong. You could accidentally kill someone, but if I don't know, like, it's still a thing.
Right.
But then that does give the question of, if would that argument hold up in court? Like, would I be found? Well, you would be found guilty to a certain extent, but then it wouldn't say
involuntary manslaughter,
first degree. Yeah, do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
I think there's degrees to that,
right?
Which. But I would say Sula is wrong. Like, just don't sleep with your best friend's husband.
Yeah, but then but the thing is, she doesn't understand that it's wrong, right? And let's
or
just wait
is
the
she
turn.
choosing not to see? Is that the easier option? It probably
honestly, it probably is. She's choosing not to see.
I think that's a good transition to the last book, Screwtape Letters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Just on that low note, we can continue into hell.
Yes.
This guy, CS, man, he just knew what was what, and wow, I would have loved to meet him because I have added a biography, some kind of biography that I can find about this man onto my books to read for this year, because he just explains things so well, and I've never heard them explained in that way. And of course, like, we grew up in super Christian homes, right? So it was always like, everything bad is the devil, everything good is God, right? And it's like, yes, but again, life is not black and white. And so Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis are this series of letters, basically, that this demon named Screwtape writes to his nephew, I believe. The story happens like during World War II. He's writing about it. And one of the more profound ideas in the book is that he keeps telling his nephew, he says, don't get too excited about the war, because this young demon, the idea is that he's getting super excited about all this death and destruction, right? And this older demon is saying, hey, like, that's great, and it provides momentary satisfaction and entertainment for us, but we're not in this for momentary satisfaction and entertainment. We are in this for the eternal benefit that we will gain by eating their souls, basically. So, anyways, so he talks about the differences in one of these chapters. He talks about the differences between men and women and how they see selfishness, right? Of course, I love this. But he says, men look at selfishness as, somebody intruding in somebody's life and always wanting to, get a word in and have some kind of, say and power of manipulation. And like, that's how they see selfishness. So when they're trying to be selfless, right, they step back, they step away. Whereas women, we see selfishness as being abandoned, right? Like, we see selfishness as like turning your back on us. Like, that's selfish, like to be up in your world. Like, no, come to me. I need your input. I need something, right? Yeah. So when women are trying to be selfless, they will give and give and give and give, right? So it's like, now you've got this person who's trying to be selfless and giving and giving and giving. And you've got this other person who's completely like, taking themselves out of the picture, or attempting to, right? And attempting to be selfless, right? And so both of them are getting so angry at each other because they think that they are, the other one is being super selfish, right? That's just one chapter of like this man's ability to explain, human relationships and how silly we are, right? And then a really good reminder, sorry, you can cut out any of this that you want to cut out, but a really good reminder that I read was like, fear, anxiety, depression, like, these are the tribulations, like, not the thing that is causing my anxiety, not the thing that is causing me to fear or to be depressed. It's like, this state that I am in, this is the tribulation. Like, this is what God wants me to go through to teach me whatever it is and to make me grow. And it's like, oh man, that's really hard to wrap my head around.
We all know how my last semester of university went. There was some stuff going on. And I think for me, the situation was awful, but the majority of my time spent in therapy and healing and dealing with the issue was with my own reaction and emotions toward it. So does it make sense that like that thing the thing that happened sucks, but it's like the true battle and the true growth comes from how you react to it and how you deal with it, not really the situation itself. Does that make sense? Is that what you're trying to say?
100%.
Wow, this got very deep.
Yeah. Are you surprised, though?
No, I'm not. I wish
you have me and Mikala on a podcast. What do you want? What do you want from us?
I know. I hope there will be at least one person who is listening to this and just be like, yeah, I totally get what you're saying. Otherwise, we're probably just all over the place. I'm just gonna go ahead and end this, and then we can continue talking in private. But thank you so much, girls.
Thank you. I had so much fun.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening to our conversation. And we will be doing this every month at the end of each month, and then we will just talk about our favorite book of the month and what we've learned from it, and just have deep conversation with each other. Yeah. All right.
Like it.
See you in February.
I love you guys.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.